Hi, this is Craig Resnick with the ARC Advisory Group. With me today is my special guest, John Dyck, who's the CEO of CESMII. How you doing today, John?
I'm well, Craig. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to start off with probably a simple question, but for some of our listeners, they may not exactly know what does CESMII even stand for? What does the acronym CESMII stand for?
Yeah, thanks for having me here today, Craig. It's an honor to be with you. It's a great question. CESMII stands for the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute. We refer to ourselves as the Smart Manufacturing Institute, just to be a little more concise and descriptive. Broadly, what that means is that we are funded by the federal government, specifically the Department of Energy, to drive smart manufacturing into the U.S. marketplace to create a more competitive manufacturing environment here. And I'm sure we'll talk about what that means, but in essence, smart manufacturing will drive energy productivity, broad competitiveness here in the U.S., and that's kind of a little bit about who we are and what CESMII is all about.
You mentioned that you're a U.S. government-funded institute, so that means you're going to certainly provide benefit for all of U.S. manufacturing. But it's interesting because I saw a recent announcement that you made that CESMII was working with the Platform Industry 4.0 initiative, which is, as we all know, is certainly a strategy of the German government. What does that affect? Being U.S. government funded, how does that affect your ability to work with other countries and other international non-U.S. based companies? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's an important question. We're funded by the federal government to the tune of $140 million to spend over a number of years to focus on really important objectives for the country. And what that means broadly is that the funds we spend, the projects we invest in, the innovations that we identify as being strategic and important for us to propagate, those funds are spent here in the U.S. With, I believe, almost no exceptions. But what that also enables us to do is engage with other organizations around the world in ways that are consistent with our, obviously, regulations and with the guidance put forward by our funding agency. So as long as we're careful about the funding components, about the way we manage intellectual property and all of the other components that are part of that regulatory set of requirements, we can engage with important other organizations. And as you pointed out, the German group out of the Platform Industry 4.0 organization is a very, very strategic group in this space. And it's important that we ensure that we harmonize our efforts to provide guidance, perhaps technology foundations, other upskilling and training capabilities that are at very worst, or at the very least rather, not at odds with one another. And I believe, stated more positively, that can really help accelerate one another as we drive those harmonization efforts. But yeah, that's kind of how we think about working with outside organizations outside the U.S.
And I know you certainly have a number of partnerships and collaboration agreements with whether it be companies like Microsoft or certainly other standards body organizations like the OPC Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about your partnerships and collaborations with other companies and standards bodies?
Yeah, I'd love to, because frankly, as you have been advocating for a long time, this is a big domain. This is a big set of opportunities and challenges that need to be addressed to create a more competitive and I'll say more democratized manufacturing environment here in the U.S. and abroad. And there's no one organization that can attack and sort of tackle these challenges individually. And so from our perspective, in no particular order of solve or priority, standards advocacy is a very important piece, right? We believe there are some areas of sort of foundational technology areas where no standards exists, and where we're actually investing in some important foundational technologies, which we may talk about here. But and in that case, we're talking about funding the creation of some de facto standards driven by real adoption in the marketplace. But to the broader question you just asked, the OPC Foundation is a great example of an organization that has had an enormous impact in the marketplace. One of the few places where as a standard, it's been broadly adopted and continues to evolve in ways that are truly helpful to drive interoperability at the comms and information modeling level, which is a big part of what we think needs to happen to enable the velocity of adoption of Industry 4.0 smart manufacturing here in this country. So the OPC Foundation is an important organization in that respect. You mentioned Microsoft as one of the biggest, if not the biggest, market maker in this space, and an organization that's investing in many ways in this space and has a great track record with manufacturing. I think you and I were both around 30 years ago when DOS and then Windows became ubiquitous on the shop floor, and then Excel, I think, represents the most ubiquitous and broadly used product in the manufacturing operation space, I would say. And so Microsoft has a long track record there and is doing a great job in many ways, trying to aid in the process of democratization. And recently, our focus aligns so well with theirs around interoperability and openness, whether it's open source, whether it's crowdsourcing, whether it's the sort of foundational technologies that we're focused on around the innovation platform and the idea of standardized information models that we call smart manufacturing profiles. The alignment around that interoperability, we believe, is central to the notion of truly seeing value creation for manufacturers in a way that we haven't seen yet. And so we're excited about that. Other great partners include the Society of Manufacturing Engineering. We're working closely with Mesa as another great example. And there are others too that I'm sure I'll miss here, but that's a bit of a look at our partnering strategy.
You know, one of the things I'm curious as to is, let's say, for example, I'm a U.S. manufacturer, and I call John Dyck and I say, what can CESMII deliver to me now? What could you provide me as a U.S. manufacturer that I could get started leveraging some of the technologies that CESMII's behind?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the end of the day, we're a consortia, we're a member-based organization, and if we're not able to contribute in some significant way, value in some significant way to their organization, they're not going to find CESMII a good investment, either of their time or their treasure. So obviously we've identified various stakeholders, from the manufacturers themselves, obviously, to the systems integrators in the space, the vendors, machine builders, of course, academia. But if I focus for a moment on just the manufacturers, there are two key segments that we think about very, very carefully, and that sort of represent our core focus here. One is call it the Fortune 1000, the large enterprises, and the other segment is the small, medium manufacturers. And we think about them distinctly because I would say broadly that the latter, the small, medium manufacturers, have not had the privilege of engaging much in this sort of wave of Industry 4.0 smart manufacturing digital transformation capabilities. The entire vendor ecosystem, the integrators, the business models for these types of transformational initiatives is focused on the large enterprise marketplace. In fact, as I look back over my career, Craig, I don't think I've been with GE, with Rockwell, with a small software startup that was acquired called Active Plant. I have never been in a small, medium manufacturing plant. We're focused, our business model in this industry is focused on the Fortune 1000. So that's why we think about them differently. So that gets to your question. What can you do today at CESMII? We think about this in terms of foundational technologies that are important to accelerate the democratization of smart manufacturing. We think about knowledge, which is training, upskilling, workforce development, curriculum, and we think about the way this ecosystem innovates and the sort of transformation that has to go through as well. And so the things that CESMII provides for manufacturers today fall into those three categories. And on the technology side, we've been working on with a number of great vendors here in this space, some of the world's leading technology providers in the space, to bring a vital, what we refer to as a thin but vital layer of infrastructure to the marketplace as an open source capability to commoditize how data is ingested and contextualized. We refer to that as a smart manufacturing innovation platform. We're not for profit, so it's not out there to compete with any of the platforms in the marketplace. But what it is like I said, this infrastructure that enables other platforms and products to create value for their manufacturing market much more quickly and at a much lower cost. And this is through standardized information models. We're working, for example, with the OPC Foundation through a joint working group to build smart manufacturing access to commoditized smart manufacturing information models through a marketplace. And we believe that will allow us to cut the cost and complexity of deploying smart manufacturing systems by 50%. And we're demonstrating that now, this year, 2021, for the first time. So let me boil that down to something really simple. For a Fortune 1000 manufacturing organization or for a small, medium manufacturing organization, you can use our innovation platform, our profiles, our applications from great vendors that are members here like Emerson and Savagent and AspenTech and Honeywell and Matricon and ThinkIQ and Microsoft. You can use many of these member technologies for free for a proof of concept without any cash or cost layout on your part other than the time necessary to drive these implementations. We've tried to work on this notion of innovation triage, a phrase coined by our friends at Procter & Gamble, one of our great members here. The notion that you can spin up or provision an instance of all relevant technologies in a few minutes, connect to your data sources and begin collecting the right data in minutes, not days, weeks, or months, but in minutes, and then layer an application on top of that infrastructure in minutes as well. That is becoming a reality for the first time. And that's how we believe that democratization can happen. So yeah, we're in the early stages of that right now, but those capabilities are available today and will be demonstrated in growing numbers throughout the course of this year.
Well, that would certainly be a game changer regarding technology adoption. If something like that gets broadly adopted by industry, certainly the future of automation technology is certainly going to be subject to disruptive change. And I can imagine, trying to deploy some of the latest technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. Sounds like that platform would certainly make that a much easier and more straightforward process. So how do you think you can really pull this off, John?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I get that question a fair bit when we talk to manufacturers and others in the marketplace that want to know if CESMII is has a legitimate chance of actually accomplishing this rather audacious goal. Number one, we have significant funding from the federal government, right? So that's step number one. Do we have the war chest, if you will, to pull this together? Number two, we need the brightest and best minds here to ensure that we're focused on solving the right problems. So we're not solving problems that the great players in this space are already attempting to solve. The Rockwells, the Siemens, the GEs, those companies, Aviva, Honeywell, you name it, they have significant budgets. They're buying and organically developing great capabilities in the space. The last thing we want to do is solve a problem that the marketplace should be focused on solving. And so bringing those minds here, bringing the brightest and best minds, having conversations like this, Craig, with you at ARC as a a luminary, as a great organization in the space to advocate for some of these really important ideas. That's how we ensure our success. So that's number two. And number three, driving adoption at scale, right? And that's where we're creating a series of lighthouse organizations across the country. We call them Smart Manufacturing Innovation Centers. Organizations like North Carolina State University, like Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, like Texas A&M, like UCLA, where we have great academic institutions with real manufacturing assets and these technologies deployed there to enable these industries to engage in sort of contemporary smart manufacturing sandbox environment to innovate in ways they never have before. So most folks outside the environment don't know, for example, that North Carolina State has a pulp and paper mill on campus. They have a biopharma manufacturing plant. They have a non-wovens factory. They have enormous manufacturing capacity on site for both for their students, but also for them to engage in compelling ways, practical ways with industry. So we've taken our technologies, our innovation platform, and our great vendor partners, and we've layered them on top of those manufacturing assets. And now we've got an incredible set of capabilities for industry to engage in and, like I said, use as a sandbox to drive innovation. The students can, the industry organizations can, and they can certainly come together and leverage the work that they do there to propagate these ideas in the marketplace. So these are all the different components that make up our, I'll say, high probability chance of actually driving smart manufacturing forward at scale. I will make a somewhat provocative statement here, Craig, and say that if we look at true interoperability, if we try to define what Industry 4.0 really means, what the fourth industrial revolution really means, I created a story on LinkedIn yesterday, a post on LinkedIn yesterday, with a 3-decade look at manufacturing productivity, and it's not hard to see a dramatic shift in our productivity trajectory in 2010, and we've flattened and then saw our productivity decline for the last decade. I believe fundamentally that the promise of the fourth industrial revolution will play a foundational role in seeing our productivity here in the U.S. climb again. But we're not there yet. We're clearly not there yet. The promise of Industry 4.0 hasn't been actualized in any measurable way. And so crossing that chasm from, Industry 3.0 organizations and methodologies and technologies, it needs to happen. That transformation from Industry 3.0 to 4.0 has to happen. And we're here to accelerate that. And it's working with great organizations like ARC that I believe will enable us to get that message out there, to allow voice of manufacturers to expect and demand things like interoperability, things like de facto standards in a much more rapid and agile way than we have in the past.
Well, yeah, that's great to hear, John. One of the things that we've certainly noticed at ARC is sometimes there's no greater market driver than like a global disaster like the pandemic. And one of the things that we've seen in the last year certainly has been, as you know, per your point about how things may have flattened out a little bit before the pandemic, is there's been probably no greater driver or accelerator of digital transformation than really what the pandemic just did. I mean, think about it right now, from having to operate plants in remote locations without workers, or with few workers, or socially spaced workers. And the other issue, of course, is which we still are really feeling the effects of, is the whole area of the supply chain. And we never really realized how fragile the supply chains are. And the fact is right now is that when we talk to most manufacturing companies around the world, their biggest issue is not consumer demand that has really come back very, very strong, as the pandemic is, God willing, winding down. But the issue, of course, is they just can't get raw material to fulfill demand. I mean, the auto companies, the SAR rate's going to hit 18.5 million this year for the U.S., which is a very strong demand, but they can't ship cars because they don't have enough, they certainly don't have enough semiconductor chips. Mm-hmm. So right now, there's a lot of companies that are really hung up with the supply chain. So one of the things I see is that you've been working with other government institutes and kind of presenting to Congress something called the National Manufacturing Guard. Can you talk a little bit about that, John?
I sure can. And let me, before I go specifically down that path, I wanted to, first of all, concur 100% with your observation that those organizations that have developed some level of maturity and capability in this Industry 4.0 digital transformation environment were the ones that fared best. I think there's 100% correlation between that level of maturity and their ability to respond effectively through this terrible pandemic. What the unsaid or often forgotten component is that small medium manufacturers for whom digital transformation is largely out of reach are the ones that have suffered the most and continue to suffer the most. And so it's those that I think we urgently need to bring forward into this world of digital transformation. And that's why our focus on democratization, we believe, is so strategic. So with that said, and I think building on that idea, this notion of a national manufacturing guard came to life shortly after last March, when the pandemic first became very, very visible. I and my peers, the fellow institute CEOs, got together at that point on a weekly basis to look at the challenges in ways that we felt we could address challenges in manufacturing from the different domains we represent. We very quickly reached the point where we understood that the immediate things that we could do in the short term had been done, but felt it important to provide represent the perspectives of our collective manufacturing membership and the ecosystem to the administration in a way that we felt was lacking. And so we put together initially a paper called the National Manufacturing Guard, representing 4 key domains around education, around preparing a group of a little bit akin to the National Guard at large, preparing a large collection of workers across the country in different domains and empowering them to work together on future disruptions, whether it be a pandemic or other. A further sort of educational thread around how do we bring this next generation into manufacturing so that we have a much more well fleshed out sort of manufacturing base with all of these sort of innovative thinkers and diverse thinkers that I think collectively we would all benefit from. But the fourth part of that was something called a national supply chain data exchange, which we here at CESMII were specifically focused on through our efforts here. And we believe that represents a vital initiative for this country, bringing the large manufacturers and their suppliers, which in many cases, most suppliers for the Fortune 1000 are small, medium manufacturers, which may or may not be common knowledge. But the idea that we create a digital highway that enables, specifically for manufacturers, that enables them to collect data from, exchange data with their suppliers in real time about their available capacity, about the products that they're building for the OEM, about the capacity they have in their logistics network, in their warehouses, all of the different areas that today are essentially a black hole, where, believe it or not, the traditional phone calls, emails, and faxes are the preferred method of communication. And so our task force here, which consists of General Mills, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Honeywell, Raytheon, and ConAgra, as well as a few great vendors like Microsoft, ThinkIQ, and Savagent, we got together and put together an important strategic document and a proposal for how we would demonstrate this important capability with 30 to 40 small medium manufacturers in their supply network. And really, Craig, the best analogy I think I can draw here is the one that comes from President Eisenhower back in 1956 when he convinced Congress to invest in the U.S. Highways, Interstate, and Defense Act. The idea that back in prior to 1956, there was no interstate to bring this country together, to allow goods and people to travel across the country or from state to state. That was something uniquely for the government to get involved in, to define specifications and standards for, and then to fund. This is not something any individual city, village, town, or state could fund. And in the same way, we're advocating for this national supply chain data exchange in a similar way. This notion that we're relying on faxes and phone calls and emails to understand what my suppliers are doing and where their product is that I've ordered from them is unconscionable, right? This is absolutely a huge constraint to our effective future manufacturing capabilities, and most importantly, our ability to respond in a pandemic, or to any disruption. So this is the focus of our national supply chain data exchange activities. This is a focus of this national guard paper, which, by the way, as I conclude here, I'm happy to say that we had a great opportunity to work with a bipartisan group of U.S. senators and Congress people to turn that into a bill, a bicameral bill, which is on the Senate floor right now, and we hope will become legislation in the coming days. So, looking forward to that.
Well, that's certainly great. I think anything that we can do to encourage bipartisanship would be awesome in all areas.
Yes.
But manufacturing is certainly going to be an area where I think, regardless of your political belief, it's something that certainly is certainly going to be pro-U.S. And we're certainly very encouraged of the things that CESMII is doing. But before we wrap up, where do people go to learn more about CESMII? If someone, one of our listeners is now, whether you're a manufacturer or an automation supplier or a systems integrator, and I want to learn more and I want to, get involved, what do I do?
Thanks for giving me a chance to share a little bit about that, Craig. First of all, as I mentioned, we're a membership-based organization, but it's not expensive to become a member here. Whether you're a small, medium manufacturer, there's a class of membership specifically created for small, medium manufacturers, small integrators, small vendors. And then there are several other membership categories for larger enterprises. But see us at CESMII.org, CESMII.org. We've got great content there that'll help you understand exactly what the value proposition looks like for you based on the kind of organization you are. We're about raising the tide so all the boats float higher. We have a GitHub, a number of really important specifications and technologies available on GitHub for sharing what we believe are becoming de facto standards for the important areas of focus here. That's the place for vendors to learn more about our technologies. We have a great YouTube channel where we share technology videos and demos, and many of them are just simply some of the most mature and accomplished manufacturers sharing their experience and their perspective with others. Whether you're sort of at that level of maturity or not, it's guidance, it's best practices, it's insight that will help others improve. So we have manufacturers at every level of maturity in this organization. Those here that are like Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Corning, ConAgra, General Mills, et cetera, that are at the very far end of the maturity spectrum, and those that are at the other end of the maturity spectrum, right? That are here equally interested in driving a better future, but also looking for specific guidance in terms of how they can create a manufacturing IT strategy that doesn't look as complicated and as costly as what we have today. The one thing I say often and with 100% certainty is we better not be here 10 years from now with the same cost and complexity trajectory that we've created over the past 3 or 4 decades of Industry 3.0, which is largely where we still are. We believe that democratization through interoperability and openness and the sustainable manufacturing ideas that we represent to the marketplace and that we're building out with our members is the only way we can create a better future for manufacturing and for the entire ecosystem. So we want both the mature minds, thinkers, organizations, and those that are less mature that know they need more help. We need everyone here to drive towards a better future for the country and for the planet.
Yeah, I agree. And driving future is really driving this for the future is for the new normal. There's really no other way that we can be sustainable and operationally resilient if we don't take those steps. So it was great having you today, John. John Dyck, CEO of CESMII, and this is Craig Resnick from the ARC Advisory Group. Thanks so much for listening. Wishing you all a great day.
Thanks for a great conversation, Craig. Take care.
Thank you.